It was quite a surprise when they announced that Cheerleader was returning to the Turbine Theatre. However, it was quite a welcome one. It was a show that I enjoyed for the most part, but had a few issues here and there. And with a whole new batch of changes, what do I think now about Cheerleader? With several issues ironed out, am I more positive on the show now? Let's find out. But if you haven't seen my face before, hi, I'm Ellie, I talk about theatre. I do reviews, I do discussions, and if that sounds interesting to you, please consider hitting like and subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out and helps out what I do here. But let's get on with this review. Just as before, But I'm a Cheerleader follows 17-year-old Megan, who is whisked off to a rehabilitation camp for queer people, when her family suspect that she might be a lesbian. Now, what I will say is that my positives for the show remain pretty much the same. The comedy of Bill Augustin's book is extremely tight. Maybe even tighter now than when I saw it previously. The range of gags to physical to the quick, witty dialogue. And I still enjoy the meta-ness of the comedy, often pointing out how the characters are all multi-rolling or the limits of the theatre itself. The show is so camp. And it doesn't really take itself seriously, as it aims to kind of belittle the idea that homosexuality is something that can be cured. Giving it this kind of camp, silly edge takes something that could be quite a traumatizing topic for people and makes it still feel welcoming when put into the world of musical theatre. But what about my previous issues with the show? When I saw it last, the biggest issue with the show was definitely its pacing, especially in Act 1. It felt over-padded before, which really made the show drag ever so slightly. Now, with a lot of script alterations and the removal of a song, I'm very happy to say that the show feels a lot snappier, and it feels a lot clearer. I'm so glad they worked on this, because it was one of the things that really made me leave Act 1 feeling so pessimistic, whereas on the second viewing, I was a lot more positive about the whole show. Another change that has breathed a lot of new life into the show is the changing of a lot of the choreography. Songs like the Act 1 finale, Seeing New Colours, and Step 5 have been completely re-choreographed. And it's given a nice little revamp to the show. They've been restaged and freshened up, and it's improved the show's staging incredibly. And certainly emphasises a lot of these numbers a lot more in my head. In a bigger space, I could see them playing with this choreography even further, but for now, and with the space and the choreography that they've got, it was very interesting and very entertaining. Now, our new cast were amazing. Jessica Aubrey is such a great protagonist as Megan. She's so human and relatable. Megan Hill is fantastic as Graham. They definitely have a punk edge about them, and their vocals are just incredible. Their version of If That's What It Takes is just an absolute showstopper. Noel Sullivan is so much fun as Mike, who I love to refer to as the camp coach. They get their moment to truly shine towards the start of Act 1 in the intervention. And finally, I wanted to mention Ash, who takes over the role that Jodie Steele originated. Now, whoever got this role had the hardest job in this show, because Jodie Steele just had a way of taking that role and literally throwing in everything and the kitchen sink and also the bathtub, because why not? Ash is such a wonderful successor to this role. I really do think she nails all of the comedic moments and does it with such ease. Another really good quality of life update. Why am I speaking about this show like it's a video game? Patch 2.0, added new set, added new cast. Removed bug where the Act 1 was too long. But another really good quality of life update they add to the show is kind of this, I'll call it the streamlining of the set design. The previous set had a lot more bits that kind of pulled out, and it was a little bit messy with how they staged it. And I'm really glad that they've kind of removed some of these unnecessary bits and have kind of simplified to just about what they needed. Because not only does it look better, stylistically, but it also helps to quicken that pace, removing some of the more awkward set changes. It felt a lot more cohesive this time. So, on the whole, a lot of my issues have been fixed about this show. But what issues still remain? Honestly, there's not many, and most of them are quite nitpicky. My biggest problem that remains isn't even really about the show itself. I just think now is the time to move this away from the Turbine. Obviously, I love the Turbine Theatre. I'm so happy that we are now getting these spaces in London where we can see new musicals be workshopped like this for return runs and testing things out and changing what didn't work to really create a really beautiful musical. I'm so glad that the Turbine and the Other Palace, in its own ways, are now helping to build this space off West End. But now's the time to move this show on. Even when I saw it last time, the Turbine felt a little bit too small for this show. This show is really calling out for the main stage of the Other Palace. Now, whether Heathers decides to move on from that space, and this can move in afterwards, we're yet to see. Or whether there's another similar space that you can move this show into. I just think the show is now in a place where it is ready to take these next steps. Now, I didn't really explore some of my nitpicks in my previous review because, well, they're nitpicks. But seeing as the show is in a pretty good place, there's two little things I want to mention. Nitpick number one, I think the era that this is set in is a little bit vague. The only reason that I now know that this show is set in the 90s is because I now know about the film. Without that, there's not really much within this show that kind of hints towards that era, especially for someone like me who did not grow up in the 90s and maybe might not catch some of the smaller references. All you need is something like Heathers, just a throwaway line about the date, or to incorporate it a little bit more, because the score kind of leans a bit closer to musical theatre than it does to a 90s style. So it just needs a little something to kind of double down and tell the audience, hey, we're in the 90s. My second nitpick on the show is ever so slightly spoilery, so if you don't want to be spoiled, skip to this time link on screen right now. You gone? Cool. I don't really like how they redeem Mary at the end. I understand that this is a story about queer joy. You want to express that, you know, being gay is not always going to be sad, but it's kind of unrealistic to have every single character, especially the most homophobic character in the show, suddenly be okay with homosexuality at the end. Mary is that character. Mary needed to be that character. Not everyone is going to turn around and love you for who you are, especially this kind of thing that takes time. Now, in the first version of the show, I had more of an issue with this because the lines of dialogue essentially just went, oh, screw it, I'm going to join in and become a cheerleader anyway. The version now, they slightly adjusted the lines, and now it's more focused on Mary's son, who also comes out as gay at the end. And she kind of has like a reassessment, and she goes, you know what, I love my son. Not really her character. It's not really her character. Just get rid of her and have her become a cheerleader in the bows. Have the actress playing Mary come out holding a pride flag. That's all you need. You don't need her to be there in the big finale, especially because you have like a extra little songy bit at the end of the finale. It's very small and it doesn't really destroy my opinion on the show in general, but I just think it's one of those little things that does get to me slightly. I am so glad that I can sit here and say that I really loved But I'm a Cheerleader this time. It's so full of queer joy, it's definitely one to catch before it leaves the Turbine at the end of this month. So, what do you think? Did you catch But I'm a Cheerleader either on this run or the previous run? Are you wanting to? Are you a fan of the film? Let me know all of your thoughts in the comments down below. If you did enjoy this video, please consider hitting like and subscribing. It really helps me out and helps out what I'm doing here. But that's it for me today, and I'll hopefully see you next time. Bye!